There are few figures in the 20th century that conjure as great a mystery as Grigori Rasputin, the Russian mystic, whose role in the fall of the Tsars cannot be understated. Rasputin's exploits in both life and death are greatly exaggerated, yet what is true is equally unbelievable. He is perhaps most famous for his death, where he was reportedly able to survive cyanide poisoning and being shot multiple times. In today's video, we will cover the life of the Mad Monk, his assassination, and how he shaped the fall of the Russian Empire. Rasputin was born on the 22nd of January 1869 in Siberia. Of his 7 sisters and brothers, he was the only one to make it past childhood. His early life was not recorded, which has led many to fill in the blanks with tales of debauchery and crime that add to his intrigue. What is known about him is that he was likely a boisterous youth who engaged in some level of petty criminality and excessive drinking. His level of education was likely next to none. In 1887, Rasputin would marry Praskovia Dubrovnia. The couple had 7 children together, 3 of whom would survive to adulthood. This rather banal existence would begin to change when in 1897 Rasputin developed a fascination with religion and embarked on a number of pilgrimages. Some believed this coincided with a need to flee for his role in a horse theft crime, whilst others point to the visions that Rasputin experienced of religious figures, including the Virgin Mary. Regardless of the true reason, Rasputin was more than prepared to abandon his life, his wife, and his children in the pursuit of spiritual goals. After his pilgrimages to as far afield as Mount Athos, Greece, and Jerusalem, Rasputin returned home a changed man. He was now a vegetarian, completely sober and devout, constantly singing religious hymns and praying. By the early 1900s, Rasputin had gathered around him a small clique of devotees who would pray with him, holding secret congregations in a makeshift chapel. These gatherings were treated with suspicion, and lurid rumors soon spread about the nature of Rasputin's preaching. It was rumored that Rasputin's female devotees would ceremonially wash him before each meeting, that the congregation would chant bizarre hymns learned from his esoteric pilgrimages, and that Rasputin was in fact a member of the Khalisti. The Khalisti were a religious sect that had split from the Russian Orthodox Church, and had renounced the worship of saints and rejected the priesthood. Instead, they favoured a form of direct communication with the Holy Spirit, with a focus on a veneration of individual leaders capable of such communication. The sect was also rumoured to encourage self-flagellation and sexual orgies as part of the worship. In all likelihood, Rasputin was merely inspired by the methods of the Khalisti, with the authorities only suspecting a link between the two due to the similar approaches. Rasputin's reputation and pilgrimages would eventually take him to St. Petersburg in 1903. There, the elites, both religious and political, were fascinated with mysticism and the occult, meaning Rasputin had a receptive audience. Rumours of his healing powers garnered much interest, whilst the stark difference between the opulence of the Russian upper class and the dirty, dishevelled holy man only added to the mystery. It didn't take too long for Rasputin to integrate himself with the Russian royal family. He was summoned to attend the palace in 1908, where he was to treat the young Prince Alexei. The prince suffered from haemophilia, a disease that was relatively common in the European royal families. It was passed down from Queen Victoria to her children, who would in turn marry into the various royal households. Alexei's illness was first kept a state secret, with the young boy kept under constant watch for fear he might injure himself and die from a massive bleed-out. In 1907, Alexei did suffer a bad fall that caused an internal hemorrhage in his leg. Conventional treatments did not seem to help, and so the boy's mother, Empress Consort Alexandra, sought help from Rasputin. Rasputin prayed over the bedridden prince and told him, "Your pain is going away. You will soon be well. You must thank God for healing you, and now go to sleep." By all accounts, Alexei soon made a strong recovery, with the swelling around his leg reducing and his mood improving. This event was proof enough of Rasputin's powers, and he soon became a fixture in the royal court of Romanovs. Rasputin's interventions and recommendations as to Alexei's medical treatments were often favoured over that of doctors, though Rasputin's influence would soon extend beyond healing the young prince to the very running of the Russian Empire. The fact that the Romanovs had full faith in Rasputin's healing powers adored him great influence in St. Petersburg. Rasputin used his new power, garnering many bribes and extorting sexual favours from the throngs of admirers that were now drawn to him, and imbibing in the decadence afforded to the Russian elites. Many in the Russian Orthodox Church opposed the rise of Rasputin, accusing him of Khlisti activity, heresy, and SA against a large number of women. Rumours soon spread that Rasputin and Alexandra were having an affair, in addition to many affairs with women of all social classes. Even more worrying to many was the level of control Rasputin seemed to have over the royal family, with the monk often being portrayed as the puppet master pulling the strings. It was during the First World War that Rasputin's control became a major issue. It was in August of 1915 that Tsar Nicholas II left the capital to assume command of the beleaguered Russian armed forces, leaving Alexandra and by extension Rasputin in control of running the empire. Whilst Alexandra likened herself to Catherine the Great, Rasputin was able to leverage his favour with the Tsarina to appoint those loyal to him. Ministers were appointed and dismissed at great frequency, all at the discretion of Rasputin and dependent on those willing to submit to his authority. As the war progressed, allegations soon abounded that Rasputin was in fact working for the German Empire, one example being that he had caused a cholera epidemic in St. Petersburg with poisoned apples imported from Canada. This in turn was linked to Alexandra, who had German heritage herself. The misunderstanding between Rasputin's actual role and what the Russian people and all classes believed they knew about Rasputin fueled the notion that Rasputin had to be disposed of. In a bid to remove Rasputin's influence over court, a cabal of nobles plotted to murder the mad monk. They were led by Prince Felix Yusupov, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, and Vladimir Perishkovich. They all believed that Rasputin's control over Tsarina Alexandra threatened the Russian Empire. In December of 1916, the plan was hatched to lure Rasputin to a party at Prince Yusupov's palace. Yusupov was married to Tsar Nicholas's niece, but he did not enlist to fight in the Russian army, leading some to believe his desire to assassinate Rasputin would reframe himself as a patriot. Just exactly how Rasputin died is shrouded in myth, though the account as described in Yusupov's memoirs is as follows. Rasputin was invited to Yusupov's palace under the pretense of meeting his wife. Rasputin was served a platter of cakes and copious amounts of Madeira wine, all of which were poisoned with potassium cyanide. Despite consuming so much poison, Rasputin appeared to be absolutely fine. In response, Yusupov excused himself and went to retrieve the revolver belonging to Grand Duke Dmitry. On his return, Yusupov told Rasputin to look at the crucifix and say a prayer, before firing multiple times into Rasputin. Believing he was dead, the corpse was left where it fell, with one of the conspirators taking and wearing Rasputin's clothing and leaving the palace in a bid to seem like Rasputin had left alive and well. When Yusupov returned to ensure that Rasputin was in fact dead, Rasputin leapt up and attacked his would-be assassin. A fistfight ensued with a startled Yusupov retreating through the palace. Rasputin would then slowly follow Yusupov into the palace's courtyard, where he was shot again, seemingly finally dying. The assassins then wrapped up Rasputin's corpse in cloth, before driving it to the Petrovsky Bridge. There it was dumped into the Malaya Nevka River below. Though even then, there were reports that Rasputin was seen clinging to ice, struggling to keep his head above the water. To quote Yusupov's memoir on the death of Rasputin, he said, "This devil who was dying of poison, who had a bullet in his heart, must have been raised from the dead by the powers of evil. There was something appalling and monstrous in his diabolical refusal to die." In all likelihood, Rasputin's death was greatly exaggerated by Yusupov. Rasputin's autopsy revealed that he died of 3 gunshot wounds, one of which to the head. Some point to Rasputin's dislike of sweet foods as proof he would never have eaten the poisoned cakes, nor was poison even mentioned in the autopsy. When Rasputin's corpse was found several days later, it did appear to have been beaten to a pulp. Although these traumas were likely post-mortem and caused by collisions with the ice and rocks in the river. It was, however, reported that there was water in his lungs, indicating that Rasputin may have died by drowning. One of the factors that led to the Russian Revolution was that many no longer believed in the royal family's ability to lead. An example of this was seen in the relationship between Rasputin and Tsarina Alexandra, many being suspicious of her German heritage and the fear she was sabotaging the Russian war effort. The hope of the assassins was that with Rasputin gone, some semblance of control could be regained, with the hope the Tsar would return triumphant and able to re-establish his authority. To the dismay of the assassins, Rasputin's death did not result in any change in how the ruling elite were perceived, nor was there a resumption of their control over Imperial Russia. To the Bolsheviks and the other revolutionaries eager to topple the Tsarist regime, Rasputin was but one symptom of the corruption at the heart of power. The death of Rasputin was seen as an attempt by the nobles to cling to what power they had left, not as any meaningful change as to how the country would be governed. Rasputin continues to draw many representations and interpretations in media. In life, some thought of Rasputin as the master of heresy, deception, and carnality, and others saw him as the epitome of sainthood blessed with healing powers. In death, this remains much the same. In media, Rasputin is often portrayed as a deviant sorcerer or evil incarnated, seen in such works as Hellboy, The Kingsman, and even the children's film Anastasia, and the song by Boney M emphasizes his sexual prowess. Rumors of his death have likely been greatly exaggerated, but what cannot be disputed is the role Rasputin played in shaping Russian history. His larger-than-life character, inspiring legends and mysticism for decades. His assassination was a response to both the rumors that prevailed and the very real influence he held at the highest levels of government. His death was likely a symptom of the turmoil of the time, with many attempting to restore order during a time of political and military unrest. Whether or not all of the turmoil can be attributed to a lone mad monk seems unlikely. Yet, the life, death, and afterlife of Rasputin is a mix of both truth and myth, where almost anything could be attributed to his prowess. We also wanted to include a segment about Rasputin's famously large member, but unfortunately, we just couldn't seem to be able to fit it into the video.